All right, welcome back to the channel. Welcome if you're new. Recording this few hours Hawaii time before the new year. So happy new year to everybody who's in a different time zone, and it's already 2024, but I've got 4 more hours to go. Anyway, I wanted to cover some small changes with the deck and kind of give you a touch up on how we're doing. One of our playtesting buddies took this to a tournament recently and got first with it, which was really cool. It was a tournament expressly designed for 1v1 battling, so it was the best of the best all the way up, and very excited to have him get some great results. And one of the things that he had done was he had made a handful of adjustments that didn't come up, but one of the changes he made was he added Fury to the deck. The card's obviously insane. It's going to be loud today. The card's obviously insane, right? It's banned in, I think, Modern, and a pretty powerful effect. The one thing that's held me back from playing it in the past was that I just simply did not have enough red cards in the deck to support it. But I think my buddy realized before I did that that's changed with the addition of, at least potentially, so with the addition of Molten Collapse, Inti, and Fable, we added Lelia somewhat recently as well. All these cards have increased the red count, and while it's not completely fantastic, like it's somewhat unreliable to get Fury, we do tend to draw a lot of cards, and certainly if you can get the effect, it's pretty powerful. But the other thing is, so there's 17 cards you could potentially pitch to it. The other thing, though, about Fury is that it's a perfectly fine hard cast card. We obviously don't want to be casting double red cards in here, but we do have a couple with alternate play patterns, right? Like, so Fury and Shatter Skull Smashing are double red cards, but in both cases, we can get around that double red cost and get some value out of the cards, either by pitching or by playing this. And of course, these two work quite well together. As a matter of fact, perfect card to pitch to it at times. So anyway, that was the result of that. And it was like, well, what other cuts and changes have been made? And where did and what slots, what came out? So one of the cards that came out at the 5 slot, because, I do like to try to push the casting cost down whenever possible, is Throne. I found that Throne of Eldraine, it actually cost me a game. I'm gonna show you. It was my first game of the day, and I made a call that was completely wrong, and it was actually after that game that I said, forget this. I think I'm done with this card. But I'd been gradually getting more and more frustrated with the card. I thought it was going to be a souped-up Gilded Lotus, and at times it is, and the card feels just nutty. Drawing cards and producing tons of mana. But there were a lot of games where I would play it, and then I would draw like Godfrey's Statue and a Winter Orb and a Thran Dynamo and the One Ring, and I'm like, I can't cast any of these with this card. It's just sitting here doing nothing. In theory, it's 4 mana, but in reality, it's just not. I'm not tapping it at all, and that is not good. That is not a good mana source. So it felt like a little bit of a win more card. Like, it was great when you were ahead and you had tons of cards to make sure that you could capitalize on it, but really bad if you were behind and didn't have something that you could put into it. For example, you'd say, well, just play your Bullszat, and it's like, well, what happens when, say, Adraneth Magistrate's out, and I've got this Throne, and I can't do anything else with my hand because it doesn't cast Angrith's Rampage, Molten Collapse, K-Command, Crucible Worlds. It doesn't cast any of these cards, right? So that was kind of the issue with it. I think Fury will be a much happier replacement. Certainly, Throne of Eldraine has not dominated any formats, but Fury has, and so I think that's a good swap. The other change that I made, though, was that I went ahead and added, you'll see it here, Douthie Voidwalker, and I returned. I don't remember if the last video had Fable at the time, but I went ahead and made sure to return it to the deck. So if the last video had Fable in it already, then it's no change to you. But for a little while, I was playing with removing the card. However, I mean, the other thing about the Throne was that, and it's relevant to the Fable, is that the Throne was 5 mana, and so at 5 mana, you basically want to be playing Tevesh. But Contrast to Fable, where it's 3 mana and it helps ramp you to 5, either by on the next turn, typically, so you have 3 mana, let's say all you have is 3 mana, you play this thing, on the next turn you draw, you discard 2 cards, you dig for mana, and then maybe you find a land, and then you attack, and you get a set, and you get a treasure, and now you can cast CEDH. So this typically ramps you straight to your commander, and that's really good. Of course, it's good at other points in the game, and it does really broken stuff in conjunction with the Dauthi Voidwalker that was added. So if you flip the Fable of the Mirror Breaker, the Reflection of Kiki-Jiki can copy Dauthi Voidwalker, and Dauthi Voidwalkers, specifically, if you're not sure this, if you haven't seen how this, most of us probably already know how this works, but besides being hard to block or unblockable, which is really good in conjunction with Inti and Hatred and stuff, maybe just to attack a Planeswalker or whatever, but besides that, whenever your opponent would put a card into their graveyard, instead it gets exiled, and you put a void counter on it, you sacrifice this, and you can play an exiled card that your opponent owns without paying its mana cost. And it says play the card rather than cast the card, which means you can play like a strip mine. Like, for example, you could wasteland one of their lands and then play that land or something like that. But what that means, though, is that it says choose an exiled card with a void counter. It doesn't say exiled from this card. So 2 Dauthis can play each other's cards. And so what you can do is you can actually Fable flip, and then you can copy Dauthi Voidwalker, and you can use the hasted copy to immediately tap and put a card that was exiled from the original Dauthi straight into you can cast it, is what I'm getting at. And so there's actually a lock you can do. Excuse me for a moment. All right, so there's actually a lock you can do where you can, in theory, like normally a 1v1 game is not going to go down this road, but occasionally you get these weird long games where you have to be creative. And so the lock is essentially, let's say your opponent has let's say they're playing a similar deck. They have a K command, or they have like a Hymn to Torok. Let's say they have a Hymn to Torok. So you if it's been exiled, the hymn, if it has void counters on it, right? So you would, during their draw step, you would, before they draw their card, during their upkeep, you Fable the Dauthi Voidwalker so that it has haste and it's a copy. Then they draw their card, and then during their draw step, you sacrifice the hasted copy to hymn them, and that card that you're hymning them from will then attempt to go to their graveyard, get exiled by the other Dauthi Voidwalker, which means that they don't get, unless their card's an instant, they just don't get a draw step ever again for the rest of the game, which is pretty cool. The other thing that Lelia can, Fable can do in here is that because we have Fury now, and Fury's not legendary, you can actually evoke Fury into play, and then you can spend 1 mana and copy it, and so you can deal like 8 damage divvied up however you want before the Fury dies, which is another pretty sweet play. And there's some other nifty things you can do with Fable, but I just wanted to point out the interactions with the new cards. So at any rate, so those are the changes. What came out? Well, right now the Throne is out for the Fury, and then the card that's out for Dauthi currently is the black and 1 destroy target creature or enchantment. I kind of forget what it's called. It's a black and 1, and you lose life equal to the mana cost. So it's a sorcery. It's not die young, but it's this kind of casting cost. It's a sorcery, and it's unfortunately the card is very desirable to play in a deck like this because it's very hard for us to kill enchantments. But on the flip side, it's also undesirable to play because black 1 sorcery, speed destruction of a permanent, a disenchant or a terror is not the greatest thing that you can be doing with your mana, right? It's just on the cusp of being good enough, but you're not, like, at 3 mana you wouldn't want to play that at all, but at 2 mana you're like, well, okay, but it's not great. And the fact that it's a sorcery and not an instant kind of hurts because you might leave 2 mana up because there's no targets, and then your opponent plays a target, and now you have to waste. You go to your third turn, you have to kill the thing like Sylvan Library or whatever, but now your whole third turn is wasted because you had to do that because you couldn't play it at instant speed, right? So that it kind of isn't the best card anyway, and it does make this deck a little bit weaker, obviously, to certain cards like Sylvan Library or whatever, but we're not completely without the ability to deal with enchantments. Obviously, we can the rest or something them out of their hand. We also have Torque, which can turn an enchantment into an artifact, and then we can blow it away with like an Abrade or whatever. So we have a couple of small solutions. Plus, with the Dauthi in the deck, we also have the ability to potentially find a solution from our opponent if we can, if they play any kind of disenchant effect, or if we make them discard one or something like that, then we can deal with an enchantment, theoretically that way as well. But also we can play around most enchantments. I mean, we're not like, before that card was printed, we weren't a complete dog to enchantments, and after that card came out, it didn't like suddenly make us invincible against them. And because a lot of times what would happen is you would just not have the answer in your hand, and you've already tutored and you don't have another one, and you got to play the game around it anyway. So what I realized was that I was just playing around not having the card a good portion of the time and doing it, and it kind of led me to realize that maybe I just don't need to play the card, and I can just play a much, much stronger card, which is Dauthi Voidwalker. So that's where we're at with the changes. So I want to touch on these games here. So in the last 7 days, we'll start with the loss, and this specific loss was to Dr. Evo. He got his vengeance for the big battle that we had in the last video. I will run through this one real quickly. And you can see I've had some other losses as well. All these folks here, disregarding these like vintage or whatever, but you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 losses. A handful of these being playtest partners. Chalk Nerds is a playtest partner, and Senger Duke is a playtest partner. He's also the one who won the tournament. The Meek is an old school playtest partner from back in the day, who is back online, and it's really nice to see. Although we don't typically we didn't stay in touch during his absence, but it's nice to see him back. And anyway, so I'm gonna get into this Dr. Evo game though, and I want to show you. This is the exact game where I cut Throne, and part of it was because this was the first game. I just woken up and I sat down. It was like my day off, and hadn't even had my coffee. I started playing. I had a complete mental. I don't know what was wrong with my head, but anyway, I made a mistake. And against somebody who's not prepared to punish me, or even is, just kind of medium at the game or mediocre, I guess I could make a mistake and get away with it. But against Dr. Evo, I was definitely not able to get away with it. He was correctly able to punish me for my error. And so you'll see here exactly what happened. So I lead off with Rog and a Foothills. I mean, if you don't know, you always want to start with a fetch here, because it's much riskier. It's much wiser to play around a Stifle than it is to, I definitely don't want to get wastelanded or strip mined here, so I'm not going to lead off with a Mountain, have it get strip mined and potentially lose because I don't have enough mana to do the rest of what I'm trying to do. And so here's the big screw up. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, Throne. And I'm thinking that I don't know why I had it in my head that this thing that costs 5 produces 5, but it definitely does not. I think because most of the time I deploy this thing and I immediately tap it and then put my commander into play. But as soon as I grabbed the card and slammed it into play triumphantly, I looked down and I was like, what the hell did I just do? And I thought, okay, well, I'll just will Calling the Weak, Rog. I actually left Rog in the graveyard because I realized what I did, and I thought, okay, here's how I'm going to fix it. Next turn I'll wheel, and then I'll get a land. Rog will come back. I can have a Calling the Weak back. Maybe I can, Deadly Relic. His commander is Narset, by the way. So I'm thinking, okay, now I have to undo this. But a problem, of course, is that twofold. One, he's playing blue, so next turn he may have just counter magic up. This is the window for getting my Tevish into play, and I blew it. And 2, he's playing both red and white, 2 colors that are exceptionally good at destroying artifacts. So what do you think's going to happen here, right? I'm sure you can figure it out from that slight tell there. But my opponent, I didn't realize how this was going to go. He Enlightened Tutors for Null Rod. Plays land, Null Rod. And yeah, my throne is garbage. And look what my hand is. Just total useless garbage. Right? So, bad news. But, maybe I can recover because I do have that will. I can get a land. So I just need to hit one land and then one land. And I can get my commander down. And then Dak Faden shows up, and he starts pitching and discarding like Talisman of Creativity. I like to see the truth. That's pretty cool. It goes great with his commander. I was trying out Praetor's Grasp here. I grasped for not Ancient Tomb here. Don't ask me why. Like, I don't know what I was doing, honestly. Look at, he's got Lotus, and it's just the weirdest thing. So I obviously am totally fine here if I just... And now I'm, by the way, with the Dak Faden, I'm super pleased that the Null Rod's in play because I clearly lose the game to Dak Faden without it. But so I am going to actually finally get rid of his commander and get my commander into play. But look at the turn that we're on now and how late I am trying to recover from my error here. I am way behind. I am 4 turns behind. CEDH would have already ultimated and this game would be over by now. Potentially. Janeth Magistrate, Sensei's Divining Top over there. And I just cannot stop drawing artifacts. So I'm going to strip mine here. Opponent Mystical Tutors for Fateful Absence, which is going to kill CEDH. And of course, it's on the top of the library, so there's very little I can do here. I can just play useless artifacts. Just in case I draw artifact kill. My deck is loaded with more artifact kill than almost any other deck in the format. But I could Vandal Blast my way out of this or whatever. Or I could just not. I could just leave the Null Rod and let it do what it does. Alright, I get to investigate, so I got a clue that I can't sack. I'm going to go after my opponent's hand. It's going to rift my Shaku. Okay, that's fine. So we're down to top decking, and I've got a Confidant that I can use to kill Dak Faden. It's there's by no means am I necessarily dead. The problem is not that I'm dead, but that this thing just basically taps to win the game. And so if my opponent hits a land drop here, which is almost impossible not to do with the Dak Faden in play, then... and plays their commander, then I basically lose. But somehow he misses. Well, he gets a land drop, but he has to do it the hard way. And then I hit just land. Actually, it's funny, if you notice my draw has been Confidant, Thoughtseize, Grasp, good cards, playable cards, and then land, artifact. And this would have been an insane, easy... overpowering game-winning hand had I just played my commander on turn 1. But instead I played Throne, and I don't find any removal for anything ever, and I just gas out and die. So this was it. I was okay, I'm not. It's not Throne's fault that I slammed it here, but it's my own fault, my own brain for doing that. But I was a little tilted, and I was you know what? It caused me to reevaluate the card in general. And then I talked about it with some of the other team, and they'd been feeling the same kind of issue with the card. And so it was kind of an easy cut. And having Fury in that slot, in that game, imagine how much different that would have gone. Having a Fury there versus, having my commander out on the second turn, drawing extra cards, using Fury to kill the commander. That's another free removal spell. It's a completely different thing, right? So anyway, I also want to cover a win against the Meek that was actually really amazing. And this is a game. This is one that shows how I can handle a situation even when I don't have my artifact removal. I don't have my enchantment removal, right? So see if we can find it. I know the fireworks are hopefully not destroying this video, but where was it? Here, it was this game against the Meek. I want to say, is that it? No, it was the other day. Here we go. All right. So my opponent is playing Bruce Tarl and Thrasios as his commanders, and I'm obviously playing the same deck. So I have to take a mulligan here, and I decide this is super risky, but I do have 2 lands, a Signet. Like, this is incredibly slow and clunky, but I've got to keep it, I think. So I go ahead and keep and draw Curse, which is huge benefit for me. Now things are just going to pop off next turn, provided that, Rog lives and Curse lives and whatnot. But I'm in such good shape now, I think. However, Stony Silence turn 2. What is with these Null Rod effects? So I felt like my opponent's mana was weak. You don't play City of Brass. It's the last card out of your hand. So given that he played a City of Brass, I go for a Strip Mine here in the hopes that I can slow down my opponent's development. It does help a little. Look at this. Oof as well. Stony Silence, oof. Like, how am I getting out of this? I kind of just wanted to give up, to be honest, but, I'm not going to just do that. So I've got the SWAT. I can, if my opponent tries to disenchant like the Curse or to kill my commander, I can retarget it towards one of his permanents. So I go for Inti here. It sticks. So I'm going to start throwing away artifacts, of course. And Inti reveals a throne. So this was the 29th, by the way. I played him backwards, but yeah, this was another game where I just, throne was immediately garbage. All right, I throw away Tainted Pact here and reveal a Hatred, and so mad at myself for not playing the Strip Mine first, but you don't do that with Inti. You want to play the, I'm going to pause for a second. You want to play the, your, first of all, I didn't do it because my opponent played a Weathered Wayfarer. And secondly, you want to hit a land off the top and play it. So, when I flipped the Hatred 3-4, can't cast it, these are all locked down, I was like, oh, that would have just been game over. I would have just won on the spot. But because my opponent played a Weathered Wayfarer, I didn't play the Strip Mine here. And I have not played the Imperial Seal because my thinking is twofold. I'm only gonna have one shot at this, but what I can do is more than likely, but what I can do is I can Imperial Seal for a card that I want to exile to Inti, and then exile it and then play it off the top immediately. So I want to wait for the opportune moment to do that. Meantime, my opponent plays a 3rd land and plays Thrasios, which gives me a window to play Strip Mine, which is nice. And I'm keenly aware of this threat over here. But, I've got Rog growing and threatening. All right, so now I have to make a decision, and I decide that the proper thing to do here, unlike the other game, was to get my commander out, as soon as possible. So I'm going for that immediately. And my opponent has a counter. Fortunately, a free counter. Fortunately, I have one too. Would have been nice if I had gotten that down before Thrasios hit, but at least we're down. So I'm going to swing in again. And the swing here is such that, and I exile Orcish Bowmasters, and I'm like, oh, dang, it's so painful. But it's worth it, right? Like, the thing is, remember, Rog has, first of all, it has Menace. So he has to block with 2 creatures. Secondly, it has Trample. So that doesn't even prevent the damage fully. But thirdly, it has First Strike. So even if my opponent threw all 3 creatures in front of it, I could just first strike down the Oof and the Wayfarer, and then Thrasios would live. But I would kill Thrasios and leave these 2 or whatever. But he's not killing Rog by blocking, so I can just swing in. Boy, I would have liked those Bowmasters. Anyway, let's continue though. I throw away Molten Collapse because I can kill a creature, but it's not really doing a ton for me. These creatures aren't really making a meaningful difference. All right, so I'm going to Thought Seize my opponent here, and it's deflecting swats it back to me. So I throw a Death Cloud, which triggers Inti, which is nice, and reveal a Dust Bowl. I'm going to go ahead and strip here, take an entire color away, swing, discard a land. I know I have a land off the top, so if I need it, so that's fine. I see a Liliana, rough, and don't remember why I don't play the... Oh, it's because I played the strip mine. So, all right, I'm going to Tevish some cards back into my hand. Finally, I Imperial Seal, swing. Now, I want you to take a look at what's happened. 10 commander damage. My opponent's at 26, and I'm swinging and putting another counter on Inti. Throwing away, of course, an artifact here. And I tutored just now. And I tutored for Rishidan Port. I'm going to continue to pressure my opponent's mana base. The reason I didn't play Dust Bowl last turn, I used Strip Mine instead. I had to back my brain up, is because, remember, I have to maintain land parity with my opponent because of the Weathered Wayfarer. Because as soon as I get ahead on mana, he can activate Wayfarer and then go grab himself, like, he can end of turn go grab Wasteland, untap, grab Strip Mine, and just destroy me. Or he could do something like grab Guy's Cradle and then just put Bruised Tarl and have some mana left over. So I've been playing around that the whole time. Alright, so here during his upkeep, I'm going to port his white mana. He gets a Smuggler's Copter he can't use. I'm not sure about this. Alright. And now I've got Tevish on 10. I'm going to Edict away a creature and swing, which forces him now. I want you to see the situation here. I'm swinging with both. So why am I swinging both? Well, because my opponent's actually taken... So the count for Rog and Inti is at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is 21. And 21 is lethal commander damage. My opponent's taken 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So by edicting first, my opponent has to double block the Rog, which means that both of his... It's going to kill both of his creatures there. Which means that he can't block Inti. So I'm going to put another counter on my commander. Force the blocks here. Nope. Can't do that, my friend. There we go. Double block. Trample over for a point. Play a land. Now I can finally get ahead on land. And port my opponent's white again. And that's it. I weathered the Stony Silence, unlike the other Null Rod game. And the trick, of course, was drawing this incredible card, Inti, but also drawing removal, right? Interactive cards. And just playing the game that this deck is good at. Imagine if I had had access to my mana. How much different and quicker that would have been. But I thought that was a really fun and interesting game, and a very challenging one to try to actually win from. And then I think there was at least one more that I wanted to highlight, if I can recall which one it was. It was the last game of the day. I don't think it was this game against Seven Dawns. I think it was on the 29th. No, not that one either. Shoot. I don't know if I can recall which game it was. Was it the game against Combinatorics? Because that is an absolutely incredible game, recovery game. Very similar to that one where I'm like completely on the ropes. Can't remember if it was this game against Nissa or not. We'll run through it and just see. If I can't find it, I can't find it. I should have written this one down, but I don't remember taking my opponent's Sylvan right away. Another way, of course, like I said, to deal with an enchantment. Opponent gets a Nissa down. I get to remove it. Check off the Bant. Doesn't look like this was a particularly close game. Opponent Fierce Empaths for a Kogla. Emergency Zone's gone. So they're holding 2 cards I know about and 2 that I don't. Yeah. I don't think this was a particularly close game. Opponent kills Rog. That's fine. And then we just get down Tevish. And my opponent's in big trouble now, obviously. I get to start clamping and, doing the thing that my commander does. And then from here, my opponent plays a Nissa, and the game ends in short order. Just like this. So this was not the game that I was looking for, of course. Don't know, can't know. I know it was against Mono Green, so I thought it was one of the games against Combinatorics. It was definitely not this one. This was just a blowout. I'll check the others. Maybe it was the first game. Well, let's look at the times. I don't know if that tells me anything. Well, I'll take a look at the other games, and then we'll call it either way. The fireworks are getting louder and louder here. Oh, this was against his Skullbriar deck? I don't recall these games, unfortunately. It was played a couple days ago. Opponent has a good start, but so do I. And I'm going first. Oracle into Assassin's Trophy, not bad. So that means Toretti's about to die or something's about to die. Swing in and hit a Assassin's Trophy. Remember my opponent, I knew what it was, so I used their Assassin's Trophy to kill their Mana Crypt. So my Toretti is not about to die. Opponent plays Invasion of Ikoria. Is that really what he played? Such a good card. This is a criminally underplayed card, I think, in green. I don't think that's what happened. Yeah, I think my opponent just, like, conceded or whatever. So it wasn't that game. I don't know. I'm going to give it up. I don't remember which is the game that I'm looking for. But I got to cover at least the big one, which was the one against the Meek where I had to beat a Stony Silence. And I covered the one that I intended to cover against Dr. Evo, where I lost to what amounts to a Stony Silence, a Null Rod. And you get to see how the deck, performs in both cases. And if you notice, like I said, the game against Dr. Evo, had I just played my commander and then, of course, oops. I don't know what's up with my mouse. Had I simply played my commander early and then rode the, the removal all the way home, I was perfectly fine there. So it just goes to show you that the deck is extremely resilient and capable of getting through a lot of really tough spots. And I wish I had the other game, but there's just too many to swim through. But as far as win rate goes with this version in the last few days, let's see, wins and losses, there's no draws, date and time, let's say last 7, it's been pretty good, right? So we've got a handful of losses, one there against the Meek, one there against Scalding Hot, I'm not sure what that was about, one there against Dr. Evo that we covered, Sengir Duke, my training partner there, Jock Nerds, another one, Lamont, Jock Nerds. So these are testing partner here. Faux Foxo, and that's about it. And then I jumped in the Vintage Cube and got a deck that I was like, where are all the counter spells? I tried to play Vintage Cube and I don't know what it is about this particular pool, but either there weren't there or I just never saw them. If I'm gonna play Vintage Cube, it's because I want to play counter spells. So I basically just died easily and quickly. But anyway, having said all that, great deck, a lot of fun, and hopefully you get the changes. And I should be posting a link to the deck list under the channel. And I just want to wish you all a happy new year. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.